That is my homage to, but here, the link to what we're going to talk about today is one of the tragedies, and her name is Lindsay Armstrong Fields, an ironic name there, Armstrong, is when she looks at the football field and she sees her son on the football field, she says it looks too much like cotton fields to her. She sees it as another misappropriation of black physical labor, and she hates it. And that's where the problems that start in Pushkin really bloom in Ada's rules that I wrote recently in an op-ed in the New York Times that has seen a lot of controversy, that the fat black woman is in some ways the exact opposite of the fit black slave. Certainly from my own life, that is what it's been. The fit black slave's labor is exploited. For plantation women and descendants of plantation women who were the aristocrats, who were cosseted and corseted and put on a porch and not allowed to move, being able to play tennis and soccer may be a point of liberation. But for the descendants of black women who were sent out in the fields to work with their bodies as soon as they could walk, when they were 3 years old and 4 years old and 5 years old, for 15-year-old mothers who had to work beside their 30-year-old mothers with their babies at the end of a row to hoe, fitness has a very different ring to it. My fat black grandmother, who was big as 3 houses, who never worked in anyone's home but her own, and never worked outside of her home, was a point of extreme great pride to both my grandfather, her husband, and to her beautiful sons, who were all tall, slim, gorgeous black men who picked often larger women because they reminded them on an ethical level of their beautiful mother who had never washed a dish in anyone's ever home or ever hoed anyone's field. And I'm not in any way above that. There's so many of us after the slave period who were working as sharecroppers, whole families, way up into the Second World War. But fitness, when that is your memory, when your fitness has been exploited by others for a commodified, is very different than fitness when you have been cosseted and not allowed to run around and exercise. And so that is what I mean when I say black fat culturally is not the same as white fat. Because I'm 53 years old, and I'm part of the first generation of black women who could afford to be fat, who could afford the luxury of having cars and maids and time of my own, and enough food to eat. It's a completely different thing. And then, on top of that, that's not the whole part of the story. I can afford to be fat as one part of it. I had no idea, and we'll get to Ada's rules in a moment, that not sleeping, doing all the things, I heard some black lady out there when I first came here, all the things I do, all the volunteer work, as I said, on the simplest level, I at one point was in the junior league and the links. That's too much volunteer work just right there for any one woman. It's too many dues to pay. I was the first black member of the junior league to come in Nashville. But when you add all that, and then every school that I have volunteered, the number of children, and I'm proud of this, I have taught to read, that when it wasn't my job, in my own family, in my neighborhood, in communities, the number of kids, I had a black woman at 4 o'clock yesterday, med student in my living room for an hour and something yesterday. I'm doing writing coaching. I'm not